Hey BookTube, this is Kelly. Thank you so much for watching my channel, Books I'm Not Reading. I'm here today to do another review video as part of my Pulitzer Prize Project rereading sort of challenge to myself. I did a series of videos over the summer about the Pulitzer Prize and realized that some of the books the Pulitzers that I had already read before I did the Pulitzer Project, I didn't reread, I think with the exception of one of them. So I didn't go back to any of those books, and realized when I was making kind of my top Pulitzer list that there were some really kind of shocking gaps in there, and so I picked five Pulitzers to reread before the Pulitzer is announced again. And so today I feel like a real moron with this review because I'm talking about Harper Lee's To Kill a Mockingbird. Now, in America, lots and lots of people read this in middle school or high school. I think in one of my classes we watched the film, which is why for a very long time I just thought this was a courthouse kind of drama. And actually in the book, the scene involving the trial and the courthouse and stuff, it's definitely not the majority of the book, although it is a very important part of the book. I read this book in 2001. So I had graduated from college. Now, I will say 2001 was sort of living a couple different lives. So maybe that was it. I don't know. I read it and it really left no impression on me when I read it. This book won the Pulitzer Prize in 1961. It was an instant bestseller when it was published in 1960. And I think the greatest lesson for me from To Kill a Mockingbird is that we change as readers over time. And unless we're put in a position where we have to discuss a book or talk about, why we love it or why we hate it or whatever the case may be, unless we're in that kind of position, like it can be easy to not be a very critical reader. And that's definitely how I would describe myself in the years after college. I was not a very discerning critical reader. And I've talked to Jason about this a lot because Jason, my husband, has, both a bachelor's and a master's degree in English, and so he took tons of lit classes, tons and tons of lit classes in college, and I didn't have to. That was not what I studied. I studied journalism. And so, yeah, I mean, it was unusual. Once in a while, we would have a journalism class where we were also expected to read a book with it. But not that often. In 2001, I should have been able to see how great this book is. But for some reason I wasn't. And so this time when I picked it up, I really wasn't sure what to expect. And I was just blown away. I was blown away by this book. I cried. I felt transported to Macomb, Alabama in the 1930s. And I didn't want to leave. Like anything that sort of pulled me away from this book and from feeling like I was in that setting and in that scenario, like I resisted against it. Like I didn't want to. I wanted to just read this book. Now I will link to my reread challenge video down below in case you haven't seen that. But I will also find another review of To Kill a Mockingbird that is not just like gushing about it, okay? So, because there is a lot of criticism about Kill a Mockingbird. It's banned all the time. I will tell you, I read this morning that it's been in print. It has been in print in hardcover and paperback since it was published in 1960, which is pretty dang impressive, I have to say. So, and again, I do think the school element definitely lends itself to that, but there have also been a lot of schools that have banned it. I don't know. My thing with banning books is always like, it just drives people to it even more. That's just my my experience of it. I don't want to spoil the book for anyone, but I do feel like it's a book that a lot of people are really familiar with. So I'll talk a little bit about the story itself. Scout is the main character. She is 6 years old when the book begins, and she's just about nine or so when the book is done. There is definitely criticism that the kind of narrative style that Harper Lee uses to tell the story from Scout's perspective, but also as Scout as an adult as well, like and her real name is Jean Louise. But there is criticism definitely that, you know, she's way too wise and old for someone her age. I felt more like she was showing us what was happening, and even if Scout didn't get it, like, she was able to let us in so that we would get it. Does that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense or not. So the book is, to me, it's more of a coming of age story than anything else. She lives in, again, it's Macomb, Alabama, small town, and her father is a lawyer. Her mother died, you know, shortly after she was born, or like she doesn't have any memories of her mother. She has an older brother, or Jeremy, and then they have a friend, Dill, who is based on Truman Capote, and he comes for the summers. And so a lot of it is just about what, you know, the games they play and what do they do. You know, they're very much free to walk around their own neighborhood, which is something that I definitely relate to, because when I was growing up, yeah, like, I mean, we went trick-or-treating by ourselves. I went through a phase where I sold Tupperware, wrapping paper, and greeting cards and all those kinds of things. So I wandered around our neighborhood quite freely. Now, definitely there were houses that I was a little scared of, which is, again, similar to this, that I was a little intimidated by, to go to the door and ring the bell. So, yeah, so there's always that kind of like mystery house in the neighborhood, and you're not really sure who lives there. Your parents know, and your parents tell you to mind your own business and that sort of thing. It's just a different world and a different time, and different from this as well, okay? For sure. I'm not saying that my childhood was Scout's childhood. Scout is growing up. She has this incredible relationship with her dad, Atticus, who is really like the moral kind of center of the book, I think, in many ways. There's a lot in here about class, and I don't just mean between African Americans and the white population. There is a class system within the white community, and there's a class system within the African American community, and that's really interesting to see. There's a lot in here, a lot for Scout to learn about what does it mean to be a lady. And I found that really interesting as well, because Scout's clearly very, very bright, and could do so many things, and instead, like, all the women in her life, or most of the women in her life, are telling her, this is what you should aspire to. You should aspire to be a lady. You know, one of her relatives moves in with them, her aunt, and is just like, oh, these kids are running wild, like they have no manners, which is not true at all. And I did love the relationships that Scout and Jeremy or Jem had with their neighbors. They very much felt free to like play in someone else's yard with their permission. It snows once, which is just like a huge deal in Alabama, and so they like take snow from one yard and then move it to their yard and then use mud and the snow to create the snowman, and they don't even really know what a snowman looks like. So it's all really just fascinating, school carnivals and that sort of thing, and church, and what's church life like, and what is church life like for their African American. God, I think to call her a maid is not enough. Like, I mean, in many ways, these children listen to Calpurnia like they would their own father. So she's a part of their family in this just wonderful way. I mean, Atticus clearly recognizes how valuable she is as a person, not as a piece of property. He can't raise the children. Like, he's a lawyer. He's in town every day. He can't make sure that they're behaving, that they're doing their homework, those sorts of things. And I find it really interesting too that they don't really call him their father, or they don't call him dad. They always call him Atticus. So that was also kind of intriguing to me. And then there is the trial. So it's a rape trial. A white woman in the community has accused a black man of raping her, and Atticus is assigned to defend the African American man. His name is Tom Robinson. And it's clearly a false accusation. It seems pretty impossible that Tom Robinson is guilty. So there's all the courtroom scenes and what happens after the trial is over. Our history is so painful. Now, some people have criticized this book for its use of racial terms. I thought that since Harper Lee was, she was comparing at least some of this to her own childhood, that if that was how they had talked as children, like, I felt like that was authentic to the time. Keep in mind, like, this was published in 1960. It takes place in 1933 to 35. So I did look online a little bit, and there's an Alabama author named Mark Childress, and he said the novel gave Southerners a way to understand racism that they've been brought up with and to find another way. He said, I think the book really helped them to understand what was wrong with the system in the way that any number of treatises never could do it, because it was popular, which I thought was interesting, and also because it was told from a child's point of view. Now, I have read other people who said that this book attacks racism, not racists, that it doesn't do enough to go after systemic racism, which, again, I'm not sure, I don't know if that was possible to do when she was writing this. I mean, she's writing this at the beginning or in the midst of the civil rights movement. So I just found that that comment interesting. Another point of view, author James McBride, who was won, I'm sure you guys are familiar with him. He's won the National Book Award. He wrote a book called The Miracle of St. Anna, which is about a really famous African-American infantry unit in, I believe, World War II. And he said that even though he thinks Harper Lee was brilliant, that she was not brave. And he said to call Harper Lee brave is you kind of absolve yourself of your own racism. She certainly set the standards in terms of how these issues need to be discussed, but in many ways I feel that the moral bar has been lowered. So I thought that was really interesting as well. For me, I just think it's a masterpiece. I thought it was a wonderful book. If you haven't read this book and you've made it this far in the review, like, I would just really, really encourage you to give it a shot. Just read it and make up your own mind about whether you think it does enough to address race issues. Do you think Harper Lee is racist? Do you think, or was this just like the starting point? Is this too much of the kind of like white people solve racism? Is it too much of that kind of a story? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section down below. And like I said, I will try to find a video to link to this. As always, BookTube, thank you so much for watching. Remember to be kind to yourself, be kind to others, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.